Morning.
Morning.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, doing good. Happy Thursday.
Good. Yeah, you too. Sorry for the slow start. I'm just getting my Zoom things all assembled here, and I think people are still coming in. Sometimes it takes a minute for the waiting room to empty and join the meeting.
Mm-hmm. So we've got Jill and Ellie.
Ellie, I'm looking forward to hearing an update about your biochar event.
Yeah, it was actually really fun and productive and exhausting. There were, I'm open to questions because I could probably go on too long. So if you have anything specific you want to know, I'm totally happy to.
It would be so great if we prioritize that for fuel reduction in areas that have been found to have the presence of sudden oak death.
Yeah, do you think that the pathogen is killed in burning?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a few people at UC Berkeley that are actually doing research on that right now.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know when reports are coming out, but I've heard through the grapevine there is research looking into that.
Thanks.
I love when there's research that actually helps us with management practices.
Takes a while, but then it gets
Don't get your
there.
hopes up. It'll probably be like inconclusive or something like that, you know?
Yeah, we found that more research must be done. I was kind of bummed to see, because we have a professor here at Cal Poly who studies, he specializes in forest pathogens, and he was saying that, like, yeah, fire is not it just can't really, like, prescribed fire controlled burns can't really knock back the pathogen enough to, like, disrupt its cycle. It's not going to be any kind of cure, but it does help. But
unless you get back to the historic fire regime interval, right? Like, not one prescribed fire won't do it, but if you're putting fire through an ecosystem in a 8 to 15 year time cycle, like, there's not research, like, we don't have data on really healthy fire regime intervals. So it's not just about one prescribed fire, it's about, like, changing the fire regime, and that might have long-term impacts. And I think a lot of people not in the fire world, it's really hard to wrap our minds around that. Whether we can get to there is another question, but yeah, that's how I imagine fire would actually really start to have impact on pathogens.
I heard some rumor about native people essentially fumigating oak trees for acorn supplies, right? So that might be something. And then there's another guy down in Big Sur who is really advocating for the role of fire in depositing nutrients post-fire into trees to help them reinforce their cambium layers and bark. So maybe there's something there.
mm-hmm. Nice. It's exciting.
Yeah. He was saying where there isn't fire, you can reenact that nutrient deposit with using crushed oyster shell. And I think this would be the time of year to do it, so the rain would kind of soak it in. But,
sounds like a lot more work than a prescribed fire, to be honest. Crushing a bunch of oyster shells and spraying around every single tree.
oh yeah, but people are spraying those trees with agrophos, right? By the tree.
Huh.
Which makes sense of, like, close to your home. You're not going to do a fire like next to your home, like, maybe some heritage trees that you're like, I really want to protect this visual, but on, like, large landscapes.
Yeah, landscape scale would take a lot of oysters.
Yeah, I think oysters are actually pretty depleted right now too. That might have, like, negative impact on our oyster populations.
Yeah, we're getting our Chinook runs back, right? So those should help deposit some nutrients. Shit, but I guess there's not a lot of grizzlies to spread them around.
So we're just chatting here for those who have joined us. And it looks like we're kind of a small group. I know a couple of people said that they would be coming in the second hour. So yeah, maybe we'll just go ahead and get started and maybe let people trickle in as they do. Jason's gonna be facilitating us this morning. Thank you so much, Jason. And yeah, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, we have an exciting agenda today. So I was going to say we need to keep our introductions kind of short. Try not to comment on every one of them like I did last time. But yeah, so yeah, we could just kick it off. I guess the first person I'm seeing on my screen, Christopher, would you like to share what's happening?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Foner. I'm with it's the Coast Ridge Community Forest, soon to be the Coast Ridge Forest Council, representing County Hill. I don't know. Hi, Devyn. I remember some of you from, I haven't been here for probably 2-3 years, just for whatever reason. So glad to be back. I can fill you in what we're doing if that's part of the agenda, but is that enough introduction for now?
That would be great. Yeah, I think we have the time to hear more about what you're doing.
Okay.
Thanks for coming back. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so you probably know Judy Rosales, who pretty much has been going to the meetings regularly. But let's see, we just, I'm not sure what she's filled in, so I'm sorry if this is repetitive.
Judy's here, by the way. She's in the meeting.
Pardon me? Pardon me?
Judy is in the meeting.
Oh, she is. Oh, I can't see her. Hi, Judy. Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'll stop my share because it'll be easier for us to see each other. There we go.
Whoops, what did I just say?
Okay.
Anyway.
Hey, Christopher.
Hi, Judy. I lost my page. So Judy, you want to just fill it in while I figure out what I did? My screen went away, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I muted here? No, okay. I'll let Christopher tell you about our new chipper. We just got our chipper yesterday. And it's a community chipper. We're forming a no-cost chipper program, looking for funding for that. We have 4 communities here on Fort Ross Road, 3 subdivided ranches, and then a community off Blue Jay Road. And so we're looking for about $25,000. We're looking for a small grant if anyone is aware of it. If there's, some kind of funding out there for that. We have some to get started. We want to get moving. We're actually leasing the chipper to our local contractor, VFD member, who will facilitate all the projects and the operators. And so we have an agreement with him. We're excited about that. The other thing that we have going right now is we have a meeting on Saturday with Marshall Turbeville, and it's a Calfire grant planning meeting. And we have representatives from all the fire districts, from Cazadero, Fort Ross, Timber Cove, Sonoma North Coast, covering the Sea Ranch to the Muniz ranches. Even though Muniz is with Bodega Bay, they're connected to our communities. And so we are all getting together for the first time, all of these communities along the North Coast, to talk about how to plan for this next Calfire grant. What are we going to do? Do we prioritize ridgelines? Do we start with the private roads, the back roads? Do we submit one grant? Do we submit multiple community grants? And these are all things that we're going to discuss on Saturday. And so we're pretty excited about that, about bringing all of us together for the first time. We've done some fire planning since Walbridge and the Myers fire. We did that in July. I've reported on that already. And this is another outcome from that meeting, and now bringing in Annapolis, Kashaya, and the Sea Ranch. And so, and then the 3 Buddhist retreat centers. We have the Padma Sambhava Peace Institute along Fort Ross Road. There's Ratnaling at Hauser Bridge and Timber Cove. And then there's Odeon between Timber Cove and Annapolis, and they're all connected there with Kashaya. So, so we're just going to look at how to plan for that grant. We're all bringing our projects and any materials. You know, people are encouraged to bring any materials that could contribute to the discussion and how to move forward. So that's the big thing that we're doing right now. In addition to looking for money, I did talk to the grant manager for the
I think that's
California.
that she should stop.
Pardon me?
We have some interference. If everybody could mute while Judy's speaking, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to give a brief update. I think it's on the agenda about funding. And I can wait until, until we get to that item. And this is just our check-in about what I found out about the California Fire Safe Council drought grant program.
Fantastic.
That's
Sounds
all.
like you're doing a lot of great work. I always worry about these chipper programs and safety, having seen a lot of incidents around chipper use. Pretty dangerous piece of equipment. So that's great. You're using a contractor to kind of oversee that. And
we are using a contractor. Christopher will be working with him, as well as one of our other board members who runs equipment. He's a vineyard owner. But you're right, we're still dealing with the legal of our contract, between us and Charles Hope Construction. And Charles is a very good friend. We've known him. I've known him since he was a teenager. We're going back and forth right now on the liability issues of a community chipper and how that's going to work. But only Charles Hope Construction workers will operate the chipper. The communities will bring all of their slash and everything to the roadside, and the work days, we have 12 work days on each ranch. So, and then we'll be scheduling those work days, and the chipper will just be coming when there's enough to get done. It's taken us months to work this out. It wasn't easy, but we're excited about it.
yeah, it seems like a model other communities can follow as you're paving the way. And I think it makes so much sense to bring Calfire in at the start of the discussions to make sure these things are supported from the beginning. So we all know it takes a lot of resources to get them off the ground. So thank you, Judy. Devyn, up to tons of cool stuff, I bet.
I think I'm giving a presentation later, so in saving
Oh, okay.
all time of listening to me talk too much, I'll just pass.
All right. Thank you, Devyn. Linda Sartor.
Hi, I'm here in place of Thea from Mononsville. She's on a flight to Washington to do a keynote speech this weekend. So I'm just here, but so I don't have anything to report.
Has there been much work on the ground out there at Mononsville? You guys recovering from the fire? What's going on out there on the land?
Yeah, well, we just had a huge burn pile day. We had prepared like 40 burn piles, and then Thea organized a really great day on the holiday, Veterans Day, and there were people from Fire Forward, plus from Good Fire Alliance, and I don't even know where everybody was from. A number of us from Mononsville, and it was a really fun day, really great day. Got a lot of burns done.
Perfect season for pile burning. That's great to know Fire Forward can provide support with that. That's really good. All right. Yeah, I know Ellie's going to tell us more about biochar, so that'll be exciting. Peter LaCourte, PUC.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? It's a pleasure, as always, to interact with my colleagues over there in Sonoma County. A lot of things going on in my world with the PUC Forest and Napa Firewise right now. I don't really want to give you guys a whole spiel. I spent a little bit too much time during the last meeting. I would like to do a quick screen share, though, and show you a before and after shot from I took from one of my projects a week ago. It's looking really nice right now. Let's see if I can find my screen share button. Do we have share screen enabled? I'm not. Oh, here it is. Yeah, sorry. So you guys seeing the before and after picture there?
Yep.
Cool. So here's where we see these were taken from the exact same location on the left.
Ooh.
You know, it's not explicitly shown in this photo, but kind of the story of my forest is that we had a stand replacing Wildfire in about 1932. That then grew up into a brush field, which grew up into a hardwood forest, which is now progressing to be a coniferous forest. However, since we haven't had a fire in the last 90 years to clean out some of those other understories, we've got kind of all those ecosystems in one. This picture doesn't exactly show it, but yeah, the forest that I've been working in is kind of a mess of, again, a brush field, a hardwood forest, and the coniferous forest, as again, these things go through the succession process to get towards their climax community. So there we see on the right, the nice open coniferous forest that has had a mimicked disturbance event. Since we don't have wildfire, we have to send machines through or hand crews and do that. I know we saw a picture last time of the masticator crew that I'm working with. I'd like to show a better picture that I have this time. We got 3 different machines I'm working with. This is the smallest one. It's a skid steer. Then we've got an excavator with a masticating head on it. Those are both units that are intended for other purposes, and then they kind of slap masticators on them. Those machines work fine, but what's really better is when you get a dedicated mulching machine, so a machine that's designed to do mastication. That's what we see in this orange one here on the background. It's by a company called FAE, and the unit is called a Prime Tech. So the way that these things operate is the largest one kind of goes through first. It does an initial clearing. It kind of knocks down some of the hardwoods in the process. One of the things I've learned throughout my work with these machines is here we see a madrone. If you just masticate this madrone down from the top and leave the base, you're going to get a lot of epicormic sprouts coming up from the base. So this masticator operator I'm working with, who's very knowledgeable, what he'll do is he'll actually kind of masticate the first top of the tree. Then he'll knock it over with the boom arm, and this unit here comes through and kind of vacuums up what he leaves on the ground, and he hits the root ball that was turned up by the masticating head, and that means that it's not going to resprout again in the future. So it takes a little bit more work up front, but this masticating team is really helping prevent a number of resprout issues that I'll have in the future with the madrones and tan oaks that I have in the forest. And then last but not least, this little guy, the skid steer, comes through and kind of does a final sweep of the project area where he masticates any larger material. He evens out the track marks. So it makes a really nice end product like we see here. Some of the mastication projects I've done in the past left a ground that had a lot of uneven material on it and a lot of track marks. We don't want these projects to be completely sterile because forested environments are supposed to have a range of different size classes on the ground that decompose at different rates. So we've got different insect populations feeding off the different decomposing materials. That being said, this forest gets walked in by a lot of community members, and aesthetics are definitely a concern for me. So this team that I'm working with from a company called Vegetation Management Services is making a gorgeous end product that I could not be more enthusiastic about. So if y'all need a masticating team, please reach out to me and I will hook you up with them. So that is what we got from me. As you guys can tell, I could talk about this forever, but I will stop myself there. So pleasure.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. That's probably the most extreme before and after I've seen right there. It's good to get those photo points to document the stuff. And it's not as though you're going through the entire PUC forest with this, right, Peter? You are focusing along the access roads and level terrain. Would
Absolutely.
you consider it a ridgeline break, or is this more an access road expansion?
I would consider what we are doing is we are expanding a ridgeline fuel break project to kind of, what I've got is I've got a prominent field that runs throughout my land. That's really the last line of defense for Calfire. And near that, I've got a ridgeline. So what we're trying to do is tie my ridgeline fuel break in with that field through thinning processes. That being said, we don't want to completely sterilize every acre of the forest, like I said. As y'all know, a key concept with forest is we want heterogeneity. So we want different patches of, we want some thick, untreated forest, we want some clean forest, and then some stuff in the middle. So one of the ways that I am kind of balancing that is I'm looking at areas where I'm deciding not to treat that are maybe another little technical term for the day, fire refugia, places at like the bottom of like a little sub valley or something like that. That's also a location where I'll have kind of little cricks where they're not registered as blue line streams, but I can still tell water is running through those locations. So what I'm trying to find is like little low-lying areas that I cannot treat and save for wildlife to hide in, and balance that with thinning areas around those, again, trying to restore the heterogeneity to the land that we would have seen 200 years ago or so. So while I'm really trying to, I will say undiplomatically, hit this land hard because we've got a lot of work we need to do in a short period of time, I'm definitely trying to balance not treating some areas, having some intermediary levels. And it's working out really nicely because frankly, funding isn't infinite. So what I'm doing is I'm realizing there are some areas that I shouldn't be treating, and that's helping me to lower my overall budget for the forest. So everything's kind of working together, and yeah, I'm very pleased with what we've got going on in the forest here. So looking forward to the field trip that we're going to do with y'all in the future. Great question, Jason.
Oh yeah, it looks like you're doing some really effective work out there. You know, I have more questions, you know, that I'll save for later, but you know, operating outside of nesting season puts us in the wet season, using equipment, but let's just table that one.
Sure.
And it can keep going from there.
Sure. Well, you know, I did a presentation for the group, a thorough one back in the early winter last year, maybe around January, February. I could do another one and keep everyone updated.
Yeah, I know we're all facing these same issues, so it's great to hear what you're up to out there, Peter. Thank you.
Absolutely. Pleasure as always.
Mary Chambers.
Hi, this is my first time attending the Forest Working Group. I am an agricultural specialist at Sonoma County Ag and Open Space. So I work with Kim Batchelder, who I think is somewhat active in this group. I don't really have any updates to share, but I'm just excited to learn about forests, and I'm especially looking forward to the update on, I think, the workshop with ag groups on forest preservation. So yeah, thanks for letting me join the group, and I look forward to learning from everybody.
Thanks so much for coming. Welcome to the group. Yeah, Kim has been a mainstay of the Forest Working Group. We've been missing him lately, but I'm sure he's very busy. Yeah, and we'll get into that ag mixer as we work our way into the agenda. So thank you for coming, Mary. Ellie Inslee, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Can you give me a few minutes? I just wanted to see if I could get, after Peter did some slides, I thought I could pull up some slides from the biochar thing.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to see them.
Okay.
Shanti Edwards, are you ready?
Hi, everybody. So no major updates, just more of kind of a continuation of the work that I mentioned last month, but we are moving forward with our CalVTP for Little Black Mountain and Pole Mountain, as well as some of our North County preserves. We did run into some hiccups, but I think we have a path forward, so that's super exciting. And then had a visit with NRCS last week, and I'm really thrilled about getting some, on the ground input on how we're going to implement that project. So those are my main headlines. Thanks.
I'd love to know more about the VTP. Can I ask if you brought in a consulting group to help with that, or what sort of resources did you need to get a VTP in motion?
Yeah, so I'd love to chat offline with anyone who has specific questions like that, but we are working with Ascent Environmental as a consultant preparing the documents and the treatment descriptions and the bio PSA. And we've had field visits with the biologists to really ground truth the sensitive plant and animal and habitat communities, because there are a lot of ways that we need to put forth avoidance measures and kind of, I guess, like guardrails and bookends on kind of the approach that we want to take just to minimize kind of red tape and hurdles when we go forth with implementation. And so it's a little bit of a balancing act, and we're learning a lot along the way. We're trying to retain flexibility because it's a 10-year document, and we want to be able to adapt to kind of changing methodologies as we all learn more, but we also want to do our due diligence and protect sensitive species. So feel free to reach out to me if anyone wants to chat further.
Absolutely. I wonder if Devyn will connect on that when he gives his talk. I know there's the ARC survey can often be like a hurdle. I wonder. Okay. Jeannie Chin. I always love hearing what Mendocino's up to. Oh, still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I've also got a place in Sebastopol. So
Oh, nice.
glad that it's not fire season for the moment.
Yeah.
And in Ukiah area where there are some burns happening, burn piles. In my Sierra Club, Northern California Forest Committee, our Oaks Working Group received a grant from Sierra Club and put together a 3.5-minute video about the importance of oaks and oak woodlands, and a project that the kids had done in Napa over several years, planting thousands of acorns, and how all those thousands of acorns don't equal one mature oak tree as they grow so slowly. They've also put together some 30-second PSAs for radio, etc. So they're really working hard on that. There is a vineyard, the CV Vineyards and Winery, and they have one of our other committee members on the Oaks Working Group has accepted taking on helping create a management plan for them, which we're thrilled about. So several of us are going to go do a site visit for that. Oaks are losing it big time, and so whatever we can do for protection measures, because they're not included in the forest practice rules and we need individual county ordinances, we're working with individual county members to create more protective ordinances. And we worked with the California Oaks Foundation, a letter of support in opposition of plans to remove and revegetate 130 mature oaks in Middletown, and creating more environmental awareness through education by another representative who is also with the Redbud Audubon Society and the California Oaks. So let's see here. We are working with our Wildfire Ecology Working Group is going bonkers dealing with PG&E. The latest one is up in Humboldt. We are going to be collaborating with EPIC on that one. In Boonville, I'll tell you, there's nothing like activists who live in the area. We've got a member who's rallied a lot of community members to protect a forest. It is a small park of old growth redwoods, and it has a road going through it, and PG&E wants to take down all the trees within 200 feet of the road. And these are large old trees because they're in striking distance. So our supervisor got on it, and they are now looking at undergrounding that 1/4 mile instead of taking down all those trees. And the jury's not out. PG&E has their engineer checking it out, but it's really great to have supervisors backing you. So that's an ongoing thing. And up in Trinity County, 75% of the power comes from the Trinity Public Utility District, because when they put in the dam, they gave that to the people, so they have a much reduced rate. The other areas are PG&E, but they don't know about the ability to have triple insulated steel core reinforced aluminum lines that don't break, and conductors that can shut off automatically through computers and not arc and spark and cause fires. So we sent our white paper up to Trinity County, and they're having meetings there. There's just so much going on. So let's see here. Yeah, we're looking at collaborating with TALS. Dee Swainhauser is the person who's working with Bob Ewing, and our committee is going to be talking at our quarterly meeting in January about how we can work with TALS specifically for Sonoma County to promote safety, support the ecosystems, reduce wildfire risk, and have agricultural and economic development at the same time without detriment to the environment. So that's another thing we're working on. And I guess I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Wow, what an update. Thanks so much for all that great work. Standing up for the Oaks, community engagement. Really impressive. Thank you, Jeannie. Jill Butler. Or Buter. Jill, are you with us?
Good morning.
Morning.
Jill Butler, and I represent the Walla River Watershed Council. And I don't have a lot to report this month. We are trying to get a meeting set up with Chris and Judy to see if we might collaborate with them on another project they're putting together having to do with rainwater catchment and gray water utilization. And I think that's about all I've got for this.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jill. Beautiful Coast Range to tend to. Mason.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, not much to update. I'm working through the Forest Working Group website on the Learning Library right now. Got a good bunch of stuff done yesterday, so just updating resources and adding content to that page. Slowly and surely each and every week. And then yeah, so that's my update for the group. And also for Fire Safe Sonoma, we have a Fire Alliance meeting later today at later today. So yeah, just a couple of things there.
Hey,
Thank you,
Mason,
everyone.
would you remind us what the Fire Alliance meeting is?
Yeah, we're having a speaker today, or actually a couple of speakers today on presenting about Pulse Point. It's only the second one I've set up, and we're also setting up future Fire Alliance meetings as well, and just trying to get speakers for each and every one of those meetings. So there's always new information out there for everyone interested.
Nice. And I just want to say too that what Mason's working on with Fire Safe Sonoma, the Fire Alliance, is the kind of like a monthly or quarterly or monthly meeting for all the fire safe councils.
Oh, we're trying to make it monthly for sure.
Monthly. Awesome. Okay, great. So I guess if you guys don't, if you have a fire safe council that you think should be involved but isn't yet, get in touch with Mason. He can get you all signed up.
Yeah, of course. I can also drop my email into the chat.
I just had to plug that. Sorry to interject.
No, thanks for doing it. Thank you, Mason. Carol Leone, busy as ever.
Morning, everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick community wildfire protection plan update. We are closing in on a draft, which is super exciting. We have a core committee meeting tomorrow, and then we're hoping to get the draft out by the end of the month to the steering committee for initial comment. And then it'll go out to public and general review probably in January. We want to incorporate comments from the steering committee and stuff beforehand, but it is coming along. We do have the project ranking tool entry point updated. Just had a great meeting with a bunch of folks yesterday, county folks, OSD, talking about utilizing the project tool as the central place where projects from all agencies across groups in the county can get entered into one central spot, so we can all know what everybody else is up to, which would be really, really helpful in this time when there's just so much going on in fuels management and fire prevention programs that are out there. And so we're hoping that we can do that. We're looking at, once the CWPP is completed and the tie to the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan is made and all that good stuff, we're really hoping that Fire Safe Sonoma can actually take on the maintenance of the project ranking tool and coordinate the meetings around that, which will be either yearly or a couple of times a year. So the Fire Safe Sonoma can take over that sort of collaborative community outreach role, which would be a really great solution, I think. So it's coming right along. Permit Sonoma's other projects are also percolating along. Our Wildfire Adapted Sonoma County project is about to begin to move into phase 2, where we'll start to provide incentives for defensible space and structure hardening. We're working on launching a wildlands fuels reduction program as well. That's in early implementation state or early planning stage, moving to implementation. That project has a large area of potential treatment, which focuses on areas that have been burned, and especially roadsides, and in those areas, large or small parcel owners. Does not have a near home focus like most of our other projects do. So that's our exciting news. There's been a lot of meetings lately discussing collaboration and how do we all get together to begin to make order in the chaos of all the different agencies and groups that are all working on the same but slightly different stuff. So hopefully that's something that's going to start to gel together a little bit in the future. So there's just a lot going on all of a sudden.
Yeah, and it seems like we actually have some funding support to start doing some of this good work. So thanks so much for helping us to prioritize and put the work where it's needed the most.
Yeah, I really encourage you to take a look at the hazard and risk analyses that are in the CWPP. And if you just, I would pop it in the chat, I've done it a million times, but if you just Google Sonoma County CWPP and then pop over to our hub site, that's where all of this stuff lives. And it's super easy to go in and take a look at it. The more you can see of it now, the better off you'll be. But I like the hazard and risk analysis a lot that Mark Tuckman and Esther Mandino did for us. It's awesome work and is really going to be helpful. We're also starting to talk a lot with the folks who are doing the pods stuff, which is a program started in Oregon State and it's a program that really looks at creating operational delineations for high priority projects that will help protect communities and also be operationally highly functional. And I'd really like to add that into the CWPP mix, that the North Coast resource, what is the NCRP? Whoever they are, whatever their initials stand for, has been working to pull this together, and it's almost done for our area. But I don't think it'll be done in time to actually incorporate into the CWPP, but we can pop references in somehow in the appendices, hopefully, in the future. But that's, I think, one of the most important tools for analyses that I've seen for risk prioritization and where projects should take place. So that's pretty exciting too.
Yeah, that was really impressive, just seeing all the variables kind of point to the areas most in need, from community values to forest type. It seemed to cover a lot.
Yeah, what I really liked about it too is that it not only used those community values and field types and all that stuff that we all know feeds into this framework, but they also said, well, if we do this treatment here, can we get firefighters there to actually use the work that's been done? Or is it completely inaccessible? Which is well, yeah, we should have been doing that all along. That's a great idea. So I think that that program in particular, I think that that's going to be a huge step forward. And that ultimately will be a very large tool, but will be highly, highly functional in helping us to figure this out on more than a seat of the pants basis. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, can't forget about the fire responders, gonna drive in the whole scene. Okay, thank you so much, Carol Leon. Ivan O'Neill.
Hello, everyone. Longtime enthusiast and haven't been able to attend in, live for a few months now, but I have a company here in Sonoma County called Madronus Wildfire Defense. We exist to make it easy for property owners to reduce their wildfire risk. And we do that with a software platform that helps people understand their risk and then connects them with contractors to get work done. And we generate a treatment plan for them as well. Big fan of the group and thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Seems like you're providing a really valuable service. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We have a number 707-293-6628.
That's Jill again.
Oh, hi, Jill. Okay. All right.
Hello, I just switched to the phone.
Oh, no problem at all. Okay. Ellie, I think we're back to you.
Okay, good. All right, so can I share screen? Oh, I'm Ellie Inslee. I'm with the Sonoma Ecology Center, and I've been doing a lot of work with the Resilient Landscapes Coalition, where we got a grant from the county to do presentations and education about my brain is in biochar, which is, I want to show you the slideshow and I'm forgetting all the words that I need for the resilient landscape stuff. Anyway, we do workshops on resilient landscapes, wildlife friendly, but also providing defensible space. But let me just share my screen here because I have a few clips from our biochar adventure. And just briefly, this was at my house or my 20 acres and the Sonoma Ecology Center. I hired them to do a biochar event demonstration because I had about 40 yards of piled brush where I had cut acacia trees that were adjacent to my neighbor's house, which is, he has a wood shake house. And so you'll see, I'll share this. And there are a couple of videos and some photos, and I'll just move through it quickly so that you can get an overall picture. But we had about 30 people come over the course of 2 days. This is Raymond Baltar. He's the head of the Sonoma Biochar Initiative, and these are the actual panels. Hold on, let me go back. Oh, so these are the biochar panels. These are the inner circle ones, and these are the outer circle ones, and I'll explain in a minute how that works. But they're all you can carry them around. They're portable, and they make these kilns with an inner circle and an outer circle, and they came on this this trailer. And then we're going to pan over, and this is where they're being installed. So first we create a bed where there's nothing that's flammable, and you can see the panels right there about to go in, and those are the brush piles which I had tarped, and that's my neighbor's. I guess it's his garage over there, and here's the house, and here there's still a bunch of acacia trees left, but so they're preparing a bed in this this other location. So let me move forward. So here they are. They've actually assembled the kilns. See, I don't know how to use this thing. And what they're doing here is piling dirt up at the base of the kiln, of the base of the inner circle. So the inner circle actually contains the brush, and then the outer circle creates a sort of a heat chimney, so that as the inner circle warms up from the fire burning, the air in between the two panels heats up and rises, and then there's a vacuum that's created with the fire, so it folds the anything that hasn't burned in the smoke. it folds it back into the fire, and you'll see what I mean. So they're just adding the brush. So they put small brush on the bottom, and they put in some thick, some fatter. You can only get up to 4 to 5 inches. So they start with small brush, and then the bigger brush, and then the smaller brush back at the top. And then here's an example of when it was just lit. And you can see there is some smoke going up into the atmosphere because the inner ring hasn't heated up. But later on, I just wanted you to see this because it's so impressive. That's about 5 or 6 feet across. And this is a photo of what it looks like when it's actually burned down a bit. And I don't have a good video to show you right now of what the fire looks like when it's actually cooking, but we cooked it so that first big flame was in the very beginning, and then we kept adding brush throughout the day for like 3 or 4 hours while it cooked, and then we let it cook down for about 45 minutes. This is before we quenched it. So while it's still red like this, we wanted it to cook down and cool down a little bit more. But that's Raymond, and there's Richard Dale, who's the executive director of the Sonoma Ecology Center. And now I've skipped something, but there's so what we did was we had to cool off the outer ring and then undo the bolts, and now we're quenching it while we're raking it out. So it took, in order to do well, I had about 40 yards of loose brush, which probably translates to about 15 yards if you were to have chipped it. And then we ended up with 3 yards of biochar. And there she is trying to put out something, and that's the charcoal at the end. So this is the end product, but then what we still have to do is mash it to a 1/4 inch minus. So you can see there are a lot of steps. At this point, we had to put it into the bucket of a tractor and move it off so that we could then refill that kiln the next day. So that's it in a nutshell. As I said, we had about 30 people come over the course of the 2 days, and most people were basically just observed, stayed an hour or two. But as I said, there's 3 stages. There's the setup and the packing, and then there's the actual burning and refilling the kilns. And then there's the cooling the outer layer and then quenching it. And then at the very end, we disassembled the whole thing and they carted it off. And so over the course of 2 days, the burn period is from 10 a.m. and then we quenched usually at about 2 or 3. I had to get an air quality control board permit, which, because I'm in the south part of the air quality district, cost me $150 for a year. But everything else went really smoothly in terms of permits and the whole process. The people who came said that they had no inclination, no indication that there was a fire anywhere because there was no smell of smoke. And so it's kind of an invisible, it's invisible to the outer public. And so this biochar, for most of you know, it's actually, they call them microorganism condos. So if you mash it down, all of those, you can see the rings of the acacia are still visible. So the structure of the wood is intact. And even if you mash it, and you have to mash it down to smaller pieces because for the microorganisms and the moisture to get in, you have to break apart some of the structure just to make it available to the microorganisms and water. So questions, that's the quick overview.
Thank you for providing that. I know it's great to see some familiar faces. And yeah, I remember when I was hearing Raymond talk about the kilns, I was imagining these big kind of pizza ovens. I had no idea it would be more like sheet metal that was so portable. And I think it is a wonderful way of getting rid of woody waste and turning it into a usable product, especially out there in the ag lands where they're doing so much burning. Maybe we could find a way to pepper that into our ag workshop.
Oh, sure. We did have to, in this case, we had to chip the larger pieces. And you just can't get away from that. there. So this is what we burned was actually, as I said, 4 to 5 inches or less. So those are the constraints. If you try to burn anything bigger, it actually doesn't turn into char because it would take too long. In order to get the bigger pieces, you'd have to cook everything else down to ash. And that's the reason that we quench it at a certain point while it's still glowing embers, because you want to actually capture that charcoal before it burns to ash. And from what I understand, you preserve about 40 to 50% of the carbon in that slash. So it has the benefits of sequestering carbon. It becomes elemental carbon with a few micronutrients because you burned off all the other impurities. So you're able to sequester the carbon for 100 years. It degrades very little, and then you have to incorporate it into an amendment like composted manure or some kind of compost, so that it actually stocks up that microorganism condo with nutrients. And if you don't, it can actually rob nutrients from the soil. So you do have to mix it with an amendment.
Yeah, it's not like things can just grow straight out of the biochar. It's like what, a 50-50 compost to biochar mix, if I remember correctly from Raymond. My dream was to see that biochar be used in fire remediation after fire to capture toxic runoff.
Right.
Carol Leone had a good question too about, so what is the final byproduct here and who is taking the biochar?
So this is a picture of the char. The final end product I haven't produced yet, but we got 3 yards out of this whole process. And so what I'm going to do with it is mix it with horse manure, composted horse manure, and spread a good portion of it back on my land, because by doing that I can improve the pasture essentially, and improve the soil, all the microorganisms in the soil, and therefore the root systems. I'm also going to package it in bell jars and give it to friends instead of granola for Christmas. There are many things you can do, but Raymond has, and I can actually put it in the chat. He provided a document that's called 55 Uses of Biochar. So I'll just put that in the chat right now, and that should help answer that question.
Fantastic. We have Brooke has joined the conversation. Brooke, are you ready to check in with us?
Hey guys, I'm out in the field. I really don't have any new updates on projects from last month. So I'm just listening in and looking forward to hearing Robert and Devyn speak.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening in. I guess I haven't gone yet. I'll try to keep it brief. I have a ton of things I want to talk about. I think since we talked about acacia, I got to talk, and Peter mentioned stump sprouting madrones. I gotta get in there on effective vegetation management, right? Because you're doing all this clearing work. I can't tell you how many trees I've seen private citizens put tens of thousands of dollars into fuel reduction, and then it all comes back as thicker resprouts. And same thing with French broom. Tons of people mowing the heck out of broom. The root just doubles. It comes right back. It's resources down the drain. Getting out there and seeing these properties where there is a consistent understory of broom pre-fire that goes straight into the canopy, and where there's an oak understory or an oak overstory, I've seen now these post-fire sites completely annihilate those oaks that are pretty resilient to fire. They will generally come back where there isn't that ladder fuel presence. So I think it's a real thing. I think we need to start thinking about invasive plant management in conjunction with fuel reduction efforts. And I know, firsthand, 2 weeks with my team after Kincaid fire took us 2 weeks to handle 200 million yellow star thistle seeds. that's an impact right there. My team last week, in a week and a half, we hand pulled 3 acres of French broom. I mean, that's making a difference. So that's my pitch. That's my voice. I just like to see veg management done effectively. And it's great to be a part of that. So I'm just pushing along, doing what I can to help see these resources be put to good use. And I think that's it for me. Adriana, did you want to give us a recap?
Sure. Adriana Stagnero. I work with the Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District, and I'm also the coordinator for the Forest Working Group. And let's see, what updates do we have? I don't really have too much. I've been busy with school and just kind of plugging away at my programs and such. But yeah, I think I'll wait until I have something actually interesting to say, and so just taking up time here. Oh, I do have an update. Robert said that he is not going to be able to give his presentation this month, but he'll join in December to do it. He had emergency work engagement come up. But I think that's okay. It gives Devyn more time. And, honestly, of course, we've been taking plenty of time in our updates anyway. So our agenda would have been pretty tight anyhow.
Should we go into it?
Do we want to just do Devyn? Well, I know Kim is going to come in the second hour, and I don't know if he's really looking for, well, actually Kim attended he did the field tour with Michael. So maybe he doesn't need to see this recap.
It's almost 11 anyway, so he should probably be in here in a second.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, if we want to just roll into that, and then we can take care of a couple of the outreach things on the back end. That sounds fine to me.
Should I share my screen? Is that my cue?
I guess, yeah, let's take it away, Devyn.
All right, let's see how I can. For living in a tech world, I should know how to do this, right? Can people see my screen? Is that happening?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, looks good.
Slides, everyone sees it?
Yep.
Cool. So I know I've given this presentation a handful of times and had people out to Pepperwood, and it's kind of just a reiteration of a lot of that, but I try to shorten it, keep it within a reasonable time frame. And then I also thought I added a page about costs and stuff just to try and make it maybe a little bit more relevant to this group and a little bit more focused on how we went through this process, along with the why. There's a lot to cover. I'm trying to do all of our forestry stuff in 15 minutes. So I'm more than happy to have follow-up conversations, have people out to Pepperwood, and Adriana was encouraging me to pick a date and a time that we could have people out, and I didn't have time to figure out the schedule with Michael Globally, our preserve manager. So to look forward to, I'm planning on hosting another site visit out at Pepperwood. So this is just kind of a presentation on what we've been doing. Was there a question? Sorry. Oh, okay. Just kind of what we're doing in our forests, and as Jeannie kind of had talked to about oaks, that's really something our ecosystems has really been historically oak woodlands and oak savanna, and so that's really kind of with this stewardship that we're doing, really our main focus is oak health, but along with biodiversity and stuff. So giving credit to Michael Globally, our preserve manager, and Michelle Halpern, our preserve ecologist, have put in time, and a lot of this information is coming from them as well. So, and onward, just a quick overview, just going to give you a little quick overview of Pepperwood and our history of forest stewardship, a little bit of our fire history, our forest management plan, a little cost overview, some lessons we've learned through this process, and restoration and research that we're doing along with the stewardship. So just as everyone knows, it's important to have a goal when you're thinking of going into forest stewardship, and just kind of keeping that goal in mind as you go. So our stewardship goal is to sustain, promote complex and resilient ecosystems for the benefit of plants, wildlife, and our communities. All we need to know. Just a really kind of picture of Pepperwood on the left. This is a really kind of confusing slide, but we got a lot of stuff going on. So on the left is kind of all of our grazing. Well, grazing's not even in there. Our forest thinning process and prescribed fire is kind of like all those segments. You can see dates in there. And these sections that are this red hash mark that say NA are current, there's 4 of them, are current projects that we are working on. And that's mainly what I will be focusing on. And then this slide on our right is just looks like a mess, but that is all the different type of research projects we have going on. Which I won't get into too much, but I'm more than happy to talk about people. But it's just to kind of give you an idea of how much research we have going on, along with how much stewardship we have going on, which on the stewardship side can oftentimes get confusing while you have to dance around research projects and meet their needs. But really the goal of our research is to inform our stewardship, and so we can be the best stewards of the land. It continues to evolve and adapt, and we continue to learn things. And I think that's really important as land stewards, that we can keep taking in new information and keep making adjustments as we move forward. So this is just another kind of picture of the forest work that we've been doing. These red ones are kind of our current project. We have funding from NRCS EQIP to do the thinning, and then we also have funding from Calfish and Wildlife to support the research and support the staff time of getting that stuff done. So if nobody is really familiar with Doug fir encroachment, this is one of my favorite pictures. You can see all the thicket of Doug fir coming up, and then there's this kind of like historic oak that is now fighting for, I think that's a black oak, fighting for water resource, nutrient resource, and light availability. So really what we've been going through here, removing these kind of smaller Doug firs to keep them from encroaching. And the reason Doug firs are absolutely a part of our ecosystem, we have about 400 acres of conifer forest that we have historic Doug firs in. We try and maintain that, but we know this area had historically been oak woodland. So we're really focusing on our oak woodlands and what is encroaching in oak woodlands. And the reason we get this encroachment is because fire suppression. Our ecosystem used to see fire in around an 8-year fire return interval. And what the fire does, especially at low intensity and with native communities using it intentionally, it would just kind of kill off a lot of the small Doug firs while they're in their young stage. But with fire suppression, this is what we are getting. Here's a good picture of kind of before and after what it looks like. And then you can see on all the slash on the ground. But what we learned, Michael had been doing forest thinning work, I believe, since 2004 or something. I might get my date a little bit wrong. It was predates me at Pepperwood. But you can see there's a lot of slash on the ground, but the oaks have a lot more light availability. And before I guess I have a slide about this. This is just another picture of some of the work we've been doing. This is an area that we did piling in because we didn't do a broadcast burn in that area, given that it had actually seen fire in 2017 and 2019. So we didn't want to put too much fire on the ground because we're already exceeding our around 8-year fire return interval. We didn't want to have 3 fires in 4 years. It's a little bit more fire than had historically been on the ground. But you can see just really opening it up, giving a lot more light availability to our oaks. And really just aesthetically, walking around in these forests, it just feels, it has a feeling to it that just doesn't feel as crowded. You can see farther, easier to navigate through. Yeah. Just a little bit of our fire history. This is the picture on the left is a picture of our landscape after the Tubbs fire. And you can really see there's some areas that burned really hot with some tree scorching, and then some areas that didn't burn too hot. So in a large portion of our preserve, it burnt pretty medium intensity, but left a lot of unstanding or some portions of the landscape that burnt on really low intensity. So according to fire ecologists, it's a really healthy burn. You have refuge areas for wildlife and the seeding for more revegetation, while you have a larger disturbance in some areas, kind of resetting your cycle back, allowing for a little bit more understory growth and maybe some new species. This map on the right, the red and the orange, or the red is the Kincaid fire, the yellow is the Tubbs fire, the black outline is our preserve, and the orange is areas that burnt in both the Tubbs and the Kincaid fire. And this is really the only portion these two fires overlapped. So much of it was at Pepperwood. But the way the Kincaid fire burnt was actually on the lower intensity compared to the Tubbs fire. So we've seen a lot of fire, but overall, our landscape's actually looking really good and responding really well to it. So just kind of what took us in, I kind of just wanted to break this down of like what we went through in terms of how we got to this process of being able to get funding for thinning projects and what we could do to remove that fuel after we thinned it. So really, first and foremost, working with an RPF to create a forest management plan is really just like a great starting off point if you kind of are looking at your landscape and don't really know what to do, or you have an idea but you want to access some funding and stuff. And foresters are really great. They understand the whole process. They understand all the regulations and a lot of the funding sources and kind of how you jump through a lot of the legality hoops. And then you get your forest management plan that's signed off by a forester and really allows you access to a lot of funding. And there's not a ton of foresters in Sonoma County, but we worked with a few of them and they're all really great and knowledgeable. And once you develop that relationship with the forester, they're a great resource. And we work with Fred a lot, who's very active in this group. And he's just a great resource for like, hey, we need a hazard tree removal person. He's like, oh, I got this guy. Well, gives us a number. So just a really great resource. Kind of helps you focus on a goal and how you get to that goal, and realistically prioritizing, your time scale. We have 3,000 acres, so we want to treat this all in 2 years. Like that's not realistic. So biting off chunks, where's your priority? What makes more sense in terms of access? And then helping you create maps and kind of figure this stuff out and provide you with resources that then you can apply for funding, which we did. And we worked with NRCS. And I believe Joe, who's actually helped us out in our last little funding round, has been active in the forest working group. I don't think he's here today, but they really helped us through the NEPA process. So NRCS is a federal agency, so it's federal funding. So you go through the NEPA process instead of the CEQA process. And they were really, really helpful with that. And that process went really smoothly for us. And then they were able to provide us funding through EQIP. CFIP, which is what is that acronym? But it's basically funding through Calfire, Calfire Forest Improvement Program, maybe. I think that's it. And you're subject to CEQA, and that's a cost share program where I think they paid anywhere between 70 and 90% of the cost of the work that fits into their practices. We have found that the EQIP funding actually kind of, they pay per acre, and we've found that actually helps cover the cost a little bit better. And going through NEPA instead of CEQA is just another thing to think about. Once we got the funding and had NRCS kind of give the approval, we hired great tree tenders, which is, I'm sure anyone working in forest lands in this area has probably used. I think they also go by another name, Deep Forests. And that was a thinning crew that came out and did our Doug fir removal. And we created a really specific protocol for each of those 4 units I kind of showed. And I'd be happy to get into that if somebody is interested in what our exact protocol is. But just generally, it was removing Doug firs that are 10 inches or less at diameter at breast height, and lopping all that stuff up into 4-foot bucking it to 4-foot lengths. And then they also, since these areas burnt in 1 to 2 wildfires, depending on which unit we're talking about, we had them also remove dead ladder fuel up to 6 feet. So basically all the dead oak branches and any other dead vegetation that is sitting on the ground up to 6 feet, kind of creating ladder fuel, which would help the next wildfire carry up into the canopy, which we're trying to avoid. We also kind of did a lot of in-house prep work, which wasn't funded by Equipped. We basically really just paid for the thinning crew. So Michael and I, flagging the perimeter so that the thinning crew knows where that exact area is. We actually tagged some larger Doug fir trees that we thought were outside the prescription, but were definitely Doug fir encroachment. So maybe some 12, 13, 14, 15 inch Doug fir trees. So we individually tagged those because there were some we wanted to keep and some we didn't. So we really just got really familiar with these units. And then some of them, there were some large fir trees that were definitely encroaching. And the only way to drop them, to fell them, would be to really damage some of the larger oaks in the area because they're so tight in there. So we actually opted to girdle in a lot of situations, which is creating dead standing fuel, but that actually creates really good habitat. You get snags. So just kind of adding another layer of complexity. With the girdling, we really have to use 2 girdles because Doug firs have a really good ability of closing in those gaps. And so working with the thinning crew, letting them know, hey, we need 2 girdle lines. And then the thinning crew is also coming in here kind of like in the fall, late summer. And so some of our deciduous trees, especially buckeyes, have lost a lot of their leaves. So to the thinning crew, they're actually really knowledgeable about their trees and their forest health. I only have great things to say about great tree tenders. They're super happy while they're out there, but just to kind of, you're running a chainsaw for days on end and there's a ton of people. So we had to go and flag some of the deciduous trees that already lost their leaves to be like, hey, this tree's not dead, especially with the buckeyes. They might look dead in the winter, but just making it clear. And then we in the areas that we were doing broadcast burn, what we did was also flagged out with 2 flags on each side. So we had a kind of a perimeter creating our fire line. And the thinning crew was really great. We're saying, hey, we're going to put a fire line in here. Can you not, when you're doing your lop and scatter, leave the area between these flags, which was our fire line. Don't put slash in there. So when we come and dig our fire line or run a dozer through, we don't have to move slash as well. And they did a really great job of doing that. So that actually took a lot of time and energy when you're talking about, 140 acres of moving through and putting flagging in and looking at trees and making decisions about individual trees. And then we're actually in the field with the thinning crews basically the whole time, not overwatching them and overseeing them, but just making sure that our protocol is getting met and, providing them with anything they need to and just continuing checking in with them. There would be maybe a half day where we wouldn't be out with them, but Michael and I tried to be out with them for the large majority of time. So I think I might have already showed this picture, but yeah, just kind of some before and after. So fuel reduction, once that thinning happens, it's really important to do fuel reduction. So this is a picture of, we did a Doug fir assessment or a field treatment assessment after the Tubbs fire. So really to go, hey, we've been doing some treatment of our Doug firs. Let's look on the ground and see if the areas, how did they burn differently? Areas that we did our Doug fir treatment in and areas we didn't do our Doug fir treatment in. And so this was in 2017. In 2017 and prior, we had been doing thinning, letting that fuel stay on the ground with the idea that it's going to decompose over time. And slowly that fuel is going to disappear and just kind of add back into the nutrients of the soil. But then we had this 17 fire and not all of that stuff had decomposed. So really what we saw when we did this assessment was, where is that? This is areas that kind of look like this picture on the left actually didn't burn as hot as areas here on the right. So you can imagine especially this picture on the right, that fuel actually has gotten even drier when that wildfire hit. So dead down fuel burns hotter than live standing fuel. So we noticed in areas we did thinning where the fuel hadn't been removed after the thinning or burnt after the thinning, these areas burnt hotter. So that really kind of sent us thinking and going, okay, well, we can't, oak woodlands are really important to us. We're not going to stop this Doug fir encroachment thinning process. We just have to now get rid of this fuel. We burnt in 2017 and 2019. We don't know when the next wildfire is. We're kind of operating under this mentality that we're going to burn in a wildfire every year, especially given our location. It's called the fire corridor, kind of between two valleys up on the Myakima Ridge. So we're really operating under this idea that, hey, we could potentially burn in every single year. So now what we're really working on is we're going to do our fuel thinning work along with our fuel reduction work. So getting that fuel off the ground or burnt or masticated or chipped, which I'll kind of get into what we've done. So post thinning, I think really what we've opted to in 2 of those 4 units, we went to do piling. So some of the pros of piles, I just did a little pros and cons list, is the ease of logistics, right? You can just tell the thinning crew to go create piles, and it's really feasible in remote areas. You don't have to worry about containment lines. You don't have to worry about getting potential water resources out there. It just can be one person walking around with a backpack pump, a McLeod, and a lighter or a drip torch, and going out and lighting those piles. So you don't also have to worry about LE7, LE8 permits, getting all the resources for a prescribed fire, which can be kind of logistically difficult. It kind of adds a little bit of logistical ease if you go towards pile burn. The nice thing about pile burning too is you can choose where you place your piles. When you're doing loft and scatter, it's kind of hard to be like, well, I don't really want intense fuel over there, especially around the base or under the canopy of our oak tree. So we can now go, hey, we want the piles not to sit right next to an oak tree and not to have, minimize the canopy above it, so we're not going to get scorching on our oak trees when we light these piles. And then permitting, you just need a smoke permit is really, and then rating for your right type of gear. So minimal permitting as well. I think some of the cons of doing this is the time and energy. I burnt about 1,000 burn piles last winter, and I have another 1,000 plus to go. And this was from work that we did last summer, and we did the thinning, and I believe it was about 120 acres. So 120 acres probably left us with around 2,000 burn piles. I've been reaching out to the Good Fire Alliance. I've been reaching out to all of our volunteers, so just getting as much help as I can. I think Pepperwood's unique. We have access to a lot of volunteers, which is really wonderful, and I'm super grateful for our volunteers. But it's still a lot of time and energy. I've been basically spent all last winter doing a bunch of pile burns, and I still have a bunch more to go. And then after the pile, it leaves this really, really intense disturbance, which is kind of like a patch of blank, soil that is going to attract invasive species. I spent a lot of my spring doing invasive species removal, and after the fires, I really, really noticed that areas that burnt really intense got a lot of thistle, got stinkwort, or other invasives that we didn't want. So that's another thing to think about, is that intense pile area is now basically a weed breeding ground. The pile placement can also kind of be a downside too, is like sometimes you might not be able to place it if you're kind of in a more oak woodland and there's not really a great place to place that. You're going to create a little bit more scorching intense areas, and maybe it's logistically not possible to place that pile in an area that you'd like it to burn. And with that, disturbance intensity is actually one thing I want to bring up too that I didn't put in here, but you can actually choose where that pile goes. So if you've got a patch of hardy grass and you want to get rid of it, or you already have a patch of invasives, you can place that pile on the invasives, burn it really intensely, kills the seed bank, kills the invasive, and then it gives you a re-blank slate. So placing the piles on resources that you want to remove might be a benefit of it as well. I did some pile burning, the escape potential. So something to think about is it's just me, maybe one or two other people out there doing pile burning, and we got maybe a backpack pump and maybe a hand tool. And there's a lot more potential from escape versus doing a broadcast burn where you have a lot of resources there. You're doing burning in all one day versus, you know, putting fire on the ground over months at a time. I actually had an escape pile in May, and it came from a pile that I had lit about 2 weeks prior. And then it kind of escaped, creeped up on a really hot windy day, kicked up some embers, and it creeped up through some leaf litter. This was in May, and it lit off some other piles. A neighbor saw, called Calfire. Calfire came and responded, and it ended up being about a 1 acre little, very low intensity burn. It didn't even burn the green grass. It was just skunking through the leaf litter, but was lighting off other piles. Calfire was really, really great at responding. We're very grateful for the work we were doing. And, you know, their only piece of advice is to go and check your piles on hot days, even if you think they're totally out. But they wanted to encourage us to keep doing this and keep encouraging landowners to do it, and really like, hey, an escape pile in beginning of May with a bunch of green grass, we'd much rather have you treat your forest and do that than not do anything of stewardship to your land. So that was something that I'm extremely aware of now when doing piles, is even if it's been 2 weeks and I get a hot windy day, I'm going to go back and look at areas that I burned and just keep my eyes on the ground, which is kind of more work on top of all that. And then the cost goes up versus of the thinning crews when they have a pile of it. It's just more manual labor for them, so it's just more time versus them doing a lot and scatter. Broadcast burns, I think really the pro is you get all that burning done in one day. You have support on that. You can go through the VMP process or the VTP process, which is pretty new. And unfortunately, it sounds like it's logistically actually a little bit better than VMP process. Unfortunately, we've started the VMP process before the VTP came out. And I think Shanti talked about the VTP. Don't talk to me about that. I don't understand it quite as well. But kind of one of the downsides, it's taken us 2.5 years to get through this VMP process. Calfire is a really large agency, and suppression is their kind of like main focus. They've been shifting a lot more into focusing on vegetation management, but it's a big bureaucracy, so it's a long process. Then there's the Good Fire Alliance and Fire Forward, which is what we're hopefully going to opt to doing some of our burns with. We have 2 burns coming up this fall that Calfire will be doing with our VMP. But we like to leave both options open because I think just giving yourself more options is always better. And it's really nice that we have the Good Fire Alliance in this community, and it's really growing along with the Fire Forward program at Audubon Canyon Ranch. So one of the other pros that can happen from a broadcast burn over pile burning is you're kind of spreading all that fuel out, not necessarily evenly, but spreading it out a little bit more over the landscape. So you're not getting any areas that are burning really, really intensely, like if you did a pile burn, just because you're having your heat in one area versus kind of spread out over a landscape. Some of the cons about doing broadcast burns is you have to create a fire line, a lot of energy and time or cost, and then that creates a ground disturbance, which is you should really be thinking about how you're going to restore your fire line and if you have the time and energy to restore the fire line. And then the other difficult thing with broadcast burns are just the logistics, getting all your ducks in a line. If you haven't been around it too, it's like getting your resources there, getting Calfire approval, getting your right permits in place. And I won't dive too deep into that because I think that's a whole nother conversation. And then chipping and mastication are also options, I think, as Peter has been talking to, and he's opted in that direction. For us, we haven't chosen to do either of those, so I didn't put any pros and cons there because I know the cost can kind of go up with the chipping and mastication. You get a little bit more ground disturbance, but maybe you're getting a fuel that's going to break down faster and decompose faster. You get a nice aesthetic, as Peter showed in his pictures. But sometimes Pepperwood, if anyone's been out here, like just logistically getting that equipment out here, we can't really do. So the burning has really been what we've opted to do to remove our fuel. Here's a picture of some pile burns. You can even see here on the right, we're getting a little pile creep. So just kind of some of the stuff to be thinking about with piles is like, okay, well, you got to be out watching it. I generally like to do one test burn, watch it burn all the way down, see what happens, see how the fuel reacts. I will be doing a pile burn workshop in January, and I'll be sure to keep everyone up to date. And we can just basically taking a couple people out that are curious, or a group of people out who are curious about doing pile burning on their own land, and going out and lighting some piles and get people a little bit more comfortable, hopefully burning at Pepperwood, and then they can hopefully take that back to their land and do pile burn safely. Picture of some broadcast burns. I believe picture on the right is at Pepperwood Preserve. Picture on the left is at Pepperwood. I know that a lot of us in this group are actually working on the land. So I kind of just really quickly threw this cost analysis together of our latest project. So great tree tenders charge us hourly about $60 an hour, and their kind of foreman and lead basically keeps track of the budget and the cost, so you do not go over budget. So we say, hey, we got 140,000 acres. Can you keep us on track and communicating where your budget's at, roughly how many, and then you can kind of figure out roughly how many more acres you have to go to keep in that budget. And so, it ends up being, and this is really dependent, about $1,000 an acre is what it's generally cost us with using great tree tenders, but we've also had areas that have gone up to about $1,500 an acre in the really, really dense areas. And also when we've asked them to do piling, the price has gone up just because it takes time to build piles and do that. And it's been, their crews shift a lot. So sometimes we've had, I think this last round, we had up to 28 saws working at once, which was pretty intense. But then it will vary and that crew will need to go somewhere else. So then the next week you maybe have 14 saws working at once. So that's what's nice about the foreman keeping track of that budget, because you don't always have the same number of people on the ground because they get pulled to go to other projects and stuff. So just kind of quickly, this is kind of some of the forest practices that gave us funding. So the forest through EQIP, the forest stand improvement and wildfire and forest health gives you about $940 an acre, and we treated about 140 acres. And then the thinning crew costs about $1,000 an acre in this 140 acres we treated. Then they also provide some funding for the lop and scatter. Woody residual treatment is what it's labeled as with them. And they gave us another roughly $63 an acre. And then Joe informed us too that like, hey, there's actually some new funding sources through EQIP that actually can give you funding for installation of fire breaks. And it varies a little bit, but I think the one section that we were roughly going to be under was about 24 cents a foot, which is actually really good. We missed our boat on that, and we weren't really aware of that being in practice, but we're planning on using that moving forward in the future. The thin crew, about $1,000 an acre. Then we did our dozer line for our broadcast burns, which we're planning on doing this fall. And that cost us about $760 a mile, but that's a rough estimate. There's usually like a drop-off equipment fee, and then depending on who you work with, those costs may vary a little bit. And then the time, I've roughly estimated it's about 50 to 75 in-house field days that it took for us to do all the work around the 140 acres this time. So it's hard to translate that, but maybe a field day per 2 acres is like a super generalization, and that's totally going to vary for everybody. Michael and I also know the land really well, so if you're working on a piece of land you don't know quite as well, that might actually go up in the time and the in-house field time. So all in all, just looking at these totals kind of at the bottom, we ended up spending about 143,000 for treating 140 acres. And we ended up getting through equipped about 140,000 plus or minus. So that's really putting us out of pocket cost to Pepperwood for this treatment, not including the individual field house stays that Michael and I put in. It came really, really close to covering the whole cost, which is really exciting. And especially if we implement this fuels break, prescribed fire fuel break, we are probably going to be breaking even, which is really exciting. Still, Pepperwood's still paying for mine and Michael's time to be out in the field, but I know a lot of organizations already have staff, or if you're a private landowner, you're just going to have to put your own blood, sweat, and tears into it. But this equip process has worked really, really well for us, and not much money's coming out of pocket, about $3,000 to treat 140 acres, which is pretty cool. So this is some of the lessons learned, just kind of some clippets that I think would be good for people that are interested in going into this process. So if pile burning, check, I kind of mentioned this before, but check your piles on these hot, windy days, even if it's 2 weeks. And actually, between the time I lit my pile and we got a little escape, we actually got a little bit of rain too. So I was fully didn't believe that the fire came from it, but from a pile, but it definitely did. So it was kind of hard to imagine when it happened. But just really reiterating the point of like, hey, if you are doing pile burns and you're not fully digging them up and getting them soaking wet after, like go and check on them. When you're working with the crews, making sure that they're kind of happy, you're happy with that they're meeting your requirements, your project. So during the last week of work, they'd been out here for like 3 weeks. Michael and I, they were working really great. They got that last couple days, they got a different crew lead out there, and most of the information got kind of passed along. But in that area they were working those last few days, they were no longer pulling the slash away from the base of the oaks like our protocol had asked them to do. So if we had been out there with them those last couple days, I think that was something we would have noticed and asked them to pull back the slash from the base of the oak. So when we do our broadcast burn, we're going to minimize the heat on the trunks of the oak trees. But that just added more work for us. So now we went back through and kind of did that removal stuff in-house. So continuing to work with your crews and keep your eyes on the ground, because they do change personnel sometimes. And even if they're working really well and you've been with them, it's, they're used to people being out in the field, especially the landowner. And if you're showing your appreciation, they totally don't mind you being out there and are generally really stoked that you're impressed with their work, and really have positive attitudes, at least with the great tree tender. They can't speak for anyone else. So they're a pleasure to work with. Yeah, just encourage you to keep your eyes and make sure you're always happy through the whole step. So when you're building your fire line and putting these kind of like berms or cup trenches on your fire lines, and then you get an 8-inch in 24-hour storm, really good thing to be thinking about. Oh yeah, water's gonna be flowing on this fire line. We might not put fire on the ground and restore this fire line before a storm. So Michael and I are out there putting water bars in and breaking the berm up during that rain event. And it's just one of those little things that slips your mind. Like we knew it, like, oh yeah, this is an erosion problem and a runoff problem, so we should deal with this. But everyone has a million things going on, and when it started raining, it was like, oh yeah, we didn't do that. So just one thing to keep in mind. Meeting with whoever's your burn boss, if you're doing a broadcast burn, before you install your lines. I think Michael and I, when we were out there, were thinking we were going to need a few more lines, and then we had Nate Glazer, who's our battalion chief and going to be our burn boss for this burn. Really just kind of, hey, no, I don't think you need these extra lines. So it was really nice to save us a lot of time and extra work that we didn't have to do. And we were really grateful he came out and worked with us and kind of told us exactly what he wanted. in some of the thicker areas I kind of mentioned before, potentially think about girdling to create some dead standing habitat and maybe not damaging your oak trees in the felling process. So we went through and we tagged some girdling things. And then after the fire line gets in and Nate comes and rewalks the whole thing with us, he's like, oh, you have girdled trees on the fire line that are going to be in the fire, which is something that totally slipped our brain, but it makes no sense. You don't want a girdled tree right on the fire line because that creates a hazard on the fire line. So I got really good at removing hazard trees that have already been girdled in really thick areas and trying to drop them without crushing oak trees, but it would have been so much better if that thinning crew did that. So unless you want a lot of practice removing hazard trees, I recommend not girdling trees on the fire line. And one of the things Nate said too is like, hey, if you wanted to girdle these trees, just wait until the fire happens and then go back and girdle those individual trees. So just another lesson we learned. Funding allows, fire line. Oh yeah, another thing is that the thinning crew actually thinned a little bit further out than where our prescribed fire was, just because logistically keeping our fire lines along ridges. I think one of the other things that if we had more time and a little bit of funding for, we would have asked the thinning crew to do piles of the fuel that was outside. So now I'm kind of going back and doing a lot of piling myself in the areas where had been thinned, but is not in the prescribed fire. So just would have been nice if we had the thinning crew able to do that, but just created a little more in-house work for ourselves. Restoring fire line. This is actually a picture of Kim and his son after the Kincaid fire. We had a lot of dozer lines. So going back through, create the burns that are created from those fire lines, really pulling them back in and respreading that seed bank out that kind of got pushed off to the side, and really trying to make it as contoured as possible. So you're not getting berms, creating kind of drainages, and it creates a lot more runoff. And this process worked really well for us. We keep our eyes on it, go punch in straw if we need to, or maybe create a water bar if we really need to, but we try to minimize the amount of water bars unless they're really necessary. And you can see this is the picture on the left is that same exact area. And we have lupin, it looks like maybe some native bunch grasses coming back and some popcorn flowers and some California poppies. So that was all in that seed bank that we dragged back in. You know, there's still some bare soil there. It wasn't 100% perfect, but those areas are looking really nice. So dozer line restoration is really, really important to think about if you're putting dozers on the ground and making sure you're giving yourself some time for that. Also with the pile burning, I've really been super excited about this. This is stoked. So I mentioned we have piles, and now that becomes a really big concern for invasive species because it burnt really, really hot. We are fortunate enough to have a big volunteer group here, an awesome greenhouse manager, Sonia Beringer, who's really great with native plants. And we have about 25,000 grass plugs this year that we're going to go plug into our burn piles. And this picture right here in the middle here is a picture of, this is about last August, and those are plugs that we planted into the burn piles, and they're super green, and they actually set seed that first year. So now all those extra blank areas are getting rained on by native grass seeds. Really exciting. These grasses stayed really green. I think it's because the nutrient release from the ash and then also the little pieces of charcoal that are left over help retain some of that that moisture and some of that nutrients. And I actually did like a little, pseudo experiment where I did this kind of grass planting, and I did an area that I just kind of mulched and cleared the area off. And those grasses did okay, but these grasses that we started plugging into the burn piles are so robust. And all of the grasses did really good, enough to like set seed in that first year of planting. So I'm really excited about that, putting some native competition with the potential areas that are going to get invasives. And then if you start thinking about putting these burn piles on top of invasive species or patches that you don't want, and then you can replace them with native perennial grasses, and you can do this on a landscape, what we're kind of finding is we're getting these really great stands of native grass kind of islands, with the hope that those islands can kind of spread and hopefully we'll connect. And then this picture up on the right hand side is a volunteer work day we did last month, and that was a really massive slash pile that we had. And so we were able to get a lot of native grasses in there, and really looking forward to see how that turns out. More than happy to talk to people about grass plugs and stuff like that after. A little bit about our research. So in these areas that we're doing thinning, I mentioned that we had funding from CDFW, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're trying to monitor the best, the health of our forests as best we can. I think ecosystems in general, especially forest ecosystems, are so robust, and we know a lot, and we're continuing to learn a lot, but we don't fully understand, the health of our forest without understanding every complexity of layer. So we kind of created these points in our forest, and I really like them because now we are also a biological field station. So folks that have interest in doing forest research reach out to us and say, hey, can we use your land? Here's my proposal. And now we have these plots in our forest to say, yeah, you can go do your research right here, and kind of build on these forest plots that we already have. So our funding allowed us to kind of put a data logger there that kind of picks up soil moisture and weather. And then we have a wildlife camera there as well to check on our wildlife and see, and we did this for about a year before, 1 to 3 years before the treatment, just kind of get baseline. We do veg surveys, canopy surveys, DBH of trees. We also have some herp boards, so just kind of little cover boards that we have volunteers go out and check to see newts and invertebrates and any other herps that we can find, just so we're really don't want to negatively impact our herps as well with this thinning treatment. So keeping our eye on that. I think one thing we haven't done yet, but bird surveys in that area, maybe lichen surveys, fungal surveys. So I'm pretty excited to hopefully kind of build these out, make them a little bit more robust. But for right now, we're really happy, and just trying to keep our finger on the pulse of the forest as best we can while we do these treatments, because we might start rethinking this process if some of these indicators are telling us that they're negatively impacting that aspect of our forest. Lichen and snag surveys would also be, I think, something we'd like to add. So hopefully, as this information comes out, I can do a little report out to you guys about what we're learning about our treatments and how they're affecting the health of the forest. Another really exciting thing, we just put up these Flux Towers, and basically what they're doing, we have this picture on the left here this is one watershed, our Redwood watershed outlined in pink, and then we have our Weimar watershed outlined in green. And so we're putting up 2 towers. We're not doing treatment in this red or this pink outlined area for about 3 years just to get a baseline. And in the green outlined area, we did do treatment this year. And then, so we have these towers here, which is this picture of the left. That is our research technician, Ryan, who did all our installation. He's climbing up and installing some kind of sensor monitor. And basically what these large towers collect is they try and collect the evapotranspiration of the whole watershed. Basically with the idea that if you reduce the stems per acre, you're going to decrease the evapotranspiration because there's less vegetation sucking up moisture from the soil and less of it escaping into the atmosphere. So that's kind of the idea. And then we also put weirs at the base of the watershed with the idea that if you're getting less evapotranspiration, you should get a longer stable water flow through your stream beds kind of at the base. So really kind of trying to wrap our mind around how prescribed fire is impacting our water resources, with the idea that if you re-implement more prescribed fire in a healthy interval, and you kind of remove any excess fuel and kind of get your stems per acre more to a historic level, that you are actually going to be saving more water in that watershed and allowing longer term stream flow for fish habitat and all the other things that benefit from it. This is a really new project, and the nuance and complexities are above my research level, and if interested, I think it would be really cool to get Ryan out here and maybe talk to you guys maybe in a year or so once we get some preliminary stuff. I had to put this in there. Pepperwood worked on a wildfire fuel mapper. I'm sure everybody's kind of heard about this. I think Tasha came and talked to everybody in this group once upon a time. So that information's out there, and it basically provides some good resources of kind of how to approach vegetation management and using LiDAR from, I think, a 2012 flyover. So that's out there. I can answer more questions about that if there is any more. Thank you all for listening to me ramble, and hopefully that answers some questions, and I'm happy to answer more questions. And my email there is at the bottom, if or I can put it in the chat if anyone wants to follow up with me. I'll put my email in the chat. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Devyn. I would not categorize that as a ramble, but rather a very thorough, amazing snapshot of all of the work you guys are doing out there. That was just wonderful. Yeah, really impressive. I'm not quite sure where to go from here. Adriana, do we want to get back to our agenda, or maybe just hit on the most critical things in our last 15 minutes here?
Yeah, you know, I hate to say, normally we would go into Q&A, but I think in the interest of time, we might have to send all questions via email. And yeah, there are a couple other agenda items we wanted to hit on. The riparian event and the ag mixer briefly, and then a reminder about upcoming events.
Yeah, so we have a very exciting field trip in the works coming our way on demystifying vegetation management in the riparian, with some really exciting sites planned in the works of coming through. And it looks like that field trip is shaping up for sometime in January to be determined. But we have some sites selected. We're just rounding out our speakers, so that's an exciting thing to come. And the ag mixer is something I think we should touch on too. This was another exciting concept that developed at the Forest Working Group, where we thought it would be good to interact with our ag community and look at things we can be doing to engage with the ag folks out there, to look at natural resource management projects. And I think it, you know, everything from fuels and burning to riparian, there's a lot of directions we could take that. So that's another exciting event we have coming down the road. Adriana, did you want to add anything to that? Did I do a good enough job summarizing that?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think a next step that, well, yeah, a couple of things. One is we could use some volunteers to help us sort of like put this event together. The other one is we thought maybe it would be a good place to start is just to start, is to invite a couple of our ag partners to the December meeting so that we can have a conversation about what they might imagine this event looking like, what topics we would touch on. Mary, I'm really glad you came today, and I'm sorry we don't have more time to dive into this, but getting some of your thinking on you know, what topics would be relevant for both groups to discuss would be great. And I was thinking also our partners with the Ag Commissioners and the Farm Bureau and RCD could bring some good thoughts to that conversation too.
Can I add a little context to your description of that?
Yes, please. Kim, thanks for coming.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little late today. So one of the things that kind of created this whole discussion was that we were recognizing that many ag owners have a lot of forested lands that aren't managed as part of their land holdings, but their staff is really focused on the agricultural production as they should be. But there's a need for greater expertise on how to manage the forested lands around those agricultural production areas, so that you know, we are able to protect watershed resources and also habitat for wildlife and things like that. So that was a little bit of the gist of why we thought this would be a valuable opportunity to work with landowners in the agricultural community.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I think these are both really relevant topics to take a deeper dive into. Ellie, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I just actually directly mentioned this to you and Adriana in the chat that Sonoma Ecology Center has worked with private landowners downstream of the Calabasas, the regional park along Calabasas Creek. And we would love to contribute as a presenter. So we could talk about that later. That's all I wanted to say.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, could you guys go over what potential sites we're going to be going to look at for that trip?
Yeah, we had discussed a bunch in the North Sonoma Valley there. So we were looking at Calabasas Creek, Glen Oaks Ranch, was it the ACR Preserve there? Bouverie came up in the mix. Did that cover it? Was there another one?
Just those three.
Okay, good. Yeah, all in close proximity, post-fire sites, flashy flood conditions. I think we can get into some pretty interesting subject matter out there.
One of the things we highlighted in those 3 sites is that they're under 3 different management regimes as far as entities managing those sites, as well as representing 3 different distinct vegetation cover from kind of a redwood stand in Calabasas Creek and how that transitions up to grasslands versus oak woodlands and Glen Oaks, and a fair amount of grasslands up in Bouverie.
Yeah, it's a complicated subject. We're trying to get as much representation we can from as many different parties as possible, but I think, it'd be great to have fish and wildlife representation out there, and demystifying vegetation management in the riparian. I think there's a lot there, just like every prescription for fuel management within a different ecological community. There's plenty of room for addressing invasives as fuels in there as well. So I think that'll be a good thing to discuss.
And I wanted to point out too, we've kind of been having this side conversation on email with a handful of members who have kind of volunteered or, brought up ideas. I had in my last email, I just kind of listed out who we were thinking about having as guest speakers on this event and which of the forest working group members was connected to that person, and have them kind of like make the first step to ask them, are you available a weekend in January? Would you like to talk about XYZ? I feel like it's kind of a scattershot approach, but I don't know. It's a lot of different people to wrangle. So that was the next step that I had in mind. But if anyone has a better way of organizing the riparian event, just let me know. And if you'd like to be added to that email and part of that conversation, let me know that too.
Yeah, that's typically how we've done it, is kind of like these breakout groups to run with these concepts. And so I'd say it's kind of along the same lines for the ag mixer. Yeah. And then we have some other events coming down the line. Peter, we're very much looking forward to getting out there. Did he just drop off? Yeah, I think he's no longer with us, but yeah, we've been meaning to get out to the PUC forest. So that's another good one. We also have Salt Point State Park coming down the line. And is that about, getting out to West County, the Pepperwood field trips, very exciting. Oh yeah, and then we were thinking about maybe heading out to Schoen Farm for the ag mixer. So that was in the running as a prospective site for that.
And then I guess lastly is our happy hour Christmas event in December. Just put that back on the radar.
Yeah, we can't have that fall off the radar. It can't be all work, you guys. So that'd be nice to just have some fun together. And so yeah, time for the holidays right around the corner. We've got this happy hour event scheduled following our membership meeting, so December 16th. will be the membership meeting from 10 to noon. And then we have the happy hour on December 16th from 5:30 to 6:30 at La Rosa. And, you know, another thing to mention is the invitation to come join the steering committee for the forest working group. We'd love to have more engagement and participation. So that is there for everyone as well.
Awesome. Wow, I feel like we might actually end on time, unless there's anything that we missed. Anyone have any last minute things?
Next month, I'd be happy to give more information about where we're going with the vegetation management grant program. We'll have a busy month next month, so we'd like to invite you all to various workshops that we'll be hosting to offer additional grant funding.
Excellent. Sounds good.
All right. Wonderful, you guys. Well, thanks so much for attending, and yeah, have a great weekend.
Yeah. Oh, you know, actually, if you want to, does anyone want to stay and ask Devyn questions? I don't know if Devyn, you have to go, but we can make that possible.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I have a few minutes for sure.
Okay, cool. And I know some people already dropped off and maybe they were the ones who had questions.
I'll stay on until one of the last people.
Okay.
I have a million questions, but I got to step off. Sorry, Devyn.
You know how to get
Thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate that. That's great.
Yeah. That picture of you and your son are is like, we use it quite a bit.
Where are my royalties? Where?
I know. You signed away.
All right. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey, Devyn, I had a question. Are you still on?
Yeah, totally.
You know, the creation of the piles, from the time you create them to the time you burn them, a lot of times animals or whatnot will move in there. How did you kind of deal with that? Did you, right before you burned them, did you restack them into another pile to remove any animals that might be in there?
No, and I think that was really a concern of mine. And it was kind of just one of those mitigation things where it was like, okay, well, we've got to figure this out. So what I would really do is I just like whack the pile a few times to kind of shake it up. And I think the biggest concern, birds totally dip out there, they get it. I think the big concerns are lizards. They kind of bury themselves in, and maybe some insects too.
Right.
But mammals and birds are gone. They feel the heat. They get out. Most reptiles are going to move out too. But I think my biggest concerns, and I haven't seen any signs of this, which doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Is some of the reptiles that might kind of try and bury themselves in the ground, like the alligator lizard, blueberry lizards, and then insects. And it's just one of those like cost analysis of like, all right, well, something is going to suffer from this. And it's just hard to tell. And I just think that when you're doing it on landscape scale and 100+ acres, like it's just not possible.
No. So to restack 2,000 piles.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's definitely something I went around in my head. And so I'd kind of shake up the piles first to try and spook anything out. And there was plenty of time for and the birds and mammals got it.
And did you use the craft paper to put on top of it, keep the water off?
Yeah, I did. So just like a little piece of wax paper, it's like butcher paper with like wax on them. So that was really great. And what I would do is like in the dry time when I'm doing that, I'd be out there with a piece of wax paper in my McLeod, and I'd grab some dry grass and stash it underneath that wax paper. And then that wax paper actually lights in like really, really wet, like even if it's raining, you can light the wax paper. You use it to cover your dry like bundle of grass. So then you almost have like a little fire starting kit right there.
Good idea.
And I was actually able to get fires going in pretty wet conditions with that, having a section of dry fuel, like fine dry fuel, and then the wax paper.
Right.
I didn't do that to every single pile, but the one that did was very helpful. Just because that's like a whole nother process going back after those piles, putting the cover on.
Right. Right.
But I found it worked really well when I did do that.
Cool. Hey, I'm really interested in hearing more about the results of that evapotranspiration, thinning the trees to see if there's more flow and discharge into the creeks and stuff, because that's always a big question, and different studies have shown different things. But to have something local like that will be great.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that. There's some stuff up in the Sierras about doing that, but in oaks and stuff. I think it'll be, we're probably not going to get some real data out for another like 3+ years.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm really excited about it. Just like the relationship of fire and water, it makes so much sense, and so I'm curious. And what Ryan was actually saying, he's like, I'm actually thinking this first year we do thinning, we're actually going to get an increase in evapotranspiration because you're going to get so much more understory growth. So I don't think you're going to get a straight trajectory of like, oh, look, you're saving water right away. I think it's going to be like an ebb and flow. Watch the cycle, hopefully increase over time.
Right.
But that was like one thing that he was like, I think we're going to get an increase in evapotranspiration this first year, just because
interesting
nutrient release, more sunlight on the ground, so you're going to get this more herbaceous stuff kind of coming up.
Right.
Interesting too, how plants are adapted in these river systems to I feel like there's something there with riparian plants and how much uptake they're actually taking versus, invasive cover in there, because we know start thistles takes a whole bunch of groundwater out of the grassland system.
Yeah.
So I always wonder with Himalayan blackberry or something like that.
We're really fortunate. We're an upland area. We don't, I don't think I can classify, even if it's in drainages, it's hardly riparian up here. And we're really fortunate. We got our invasives under lock. And I think we're really curious about just the Doug firs, their deep taproot. And I think that's what we're thinking. Just that, saw some of those pictures of I don't even know, 1 million stems per acre or something. Where you're just like, oh my gosh, so removing that is I think really what we're trying to capture. I think that herbaceous component adds complexity to it. And luckily these units were actually in where I'm very fortunate to have gotten a piece of land with invasive management under control, and so we're pretty on top of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because those Doug firs, you'd think they'd do a lot of uptake, but then they'd probably also catch a lot of that morning dew and fog drip and kind of precipitate it back down.
Yeah.
I always wonder about, willows out at denuded ranch lands, right? Where the cows just took down all that veg. Now you got a stream with no cover in it. And now the hydrology seems to be petering out. But if you get the willows back in there, it seems to bring the hydrology back. So it's like this offset of uptake for shade cover,
Totally. And I think this research is only going to be really specific to our area in oak woodlands with Doug fir encroachment. It won't cover riparian. I think we'd have to do another experiment in riparian. And so that's a lot of this research is just so site specific, and it'll be interesting. I think we got funding for it, and our research team will really push for it. So it's okay. And I think it'd be cool. And I'm not holding my breath that it's going to be oh my gosh, look, prescribed thinning and prescribed fire saves all this water. I'm not I don't think this is going to be a research paper that's going to be wow, look at it solved. I think it's going to be one of those research papers well, some preliminary data indicates that this might be improving and we need more research.
I mean, yeah, in the peak of the drought, not like I needed to have any more appreciation for oak trees, but looking at the oaks, especially the live oaks, they just didn't even seem to mind the most extreme periods of drought. And then you got the bays looking all brown, like they're really suffering,
Yeah, I actually started to see dieback on some of our live oaks, which I had never seen. They were experiencing drought stress, which I was surprised and had never seen that before in my life. So thank goodness for a lot of October rain. That was very nice.
Oh man, yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Devyn, I got a tricky question for you. And I wouldn't do it if there's a bunch of people on the line, but it's something I'm struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically through me trying to retain staff and give staff a livable wage and remain competitive in this industry. And now that I'm working for, I guess you could call it a fancy consulting company, you have legal advice. I'm trying to keep our rates low, and it seems that there's all of these prevailing wage conditions, right? So it's been very tricky. Like we've even gone straight to DIR and asked them up front, hey, what do we need to be charging for doing fuel reduction work? And we can't get a straight answer from them. And the last one put us at a much higher designation than $60 an hour. And so I'm kind of like at the crossroads here, not really knowing where to take it.
Man, I wish I had an answer. I don't at all. I have like no staff, right? Like, so I'm my working with staff is very minimal. I hire like a seasonal, and then we pay them $18 an hour, and it's a short period of time. They work one day a week, but retaining full-time staff, that's maybe Brooke would know a little bit more if he's still on the call, but that's I wish I had better information for you, but I use volunteers and they're always I pay them cookies.
Yeah, I have a couple pieces of information I could forward on to you, Jason. But I think it's probably deals with the specifics of a specific project site, and then but it does talk about prevailing wage and whether vegetation maintenance or fuels reduction category classifies as being a prevailing wage type job.
Okay, that'd be awesome, because that's exactly what we're trying to get to the root of. I'm just trying to get out there and help, but if we're not competitive, I can't even get people out there,
Oh yeah. Yep.
I think Jason Wells has some insight on that too. And I feel like maybe even Carrie Leone, because she's going to be hiring people for defensible space work through the Permit Sonoma. It's using much of federal funding. Okay. So she might be coming up against that too. I actually think it's a great question to put to the group if you're comfortable, because everyone's going to have to deal with this. Anyone who's using public funding.
Yeah, it was really tricky because we were trying to get the Saddle Mountain job. And in that, we have like a marketing team that goes deep into the RFP to tease out all the specs on everything. And one of the specs clearly said the land agency that is basically overseeing this project will provide the contractor with the correct prevailing wage designation. And I don't know if that was just legally included in there, because then when we asked, we couldn't get an answer back.
We've had a lot of that experience too. They will not tell you what prevailing wage shall be. Oh, do you have to go, Devyn? All right, bye. Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, awesome presentation, man.
But yeah, we've had a lot of issues with just like, it's been really tough. And we tried to like get DIR to tell us like, is this project really prevailing wage or not? Because I think, gosh, I'm having to think way back, but it was like any project that results in a commercial improvement or something like that. Or it was like, if it's I don't know, if there was something about like the purpose of the project, and we're like, well, is this project really that? And DIR I think at one point they said, it kind of appears like it doesn't really require prevailing wage. And so we took that line and we would use it in the future on certain projects that seem to be the same nature. There are times that we have definitely had to do prevailing wage, and other times when we said, no, we don't think. And like, if no one's gonna press us on it, like hopefully we'll get away with it. But it's a weird new thing. No one really knows how to navigate it, I feel like.
Yeah, I've found the same thing. When you dive into the actual language, it gets really specific around, like, it seems like it's geared for like commercial development, not like wildland veg work,
Yeah, it's really meant, the spirit of it is meant for the tradespeople to make sure that they're not getting outbidded. But the work that we do is pretty like, it's a small market of people who do the work that we're looking for. So they're less likely to get, to be non-competitive. I feel like everyone's in high demand right now.
Totally.
But anyway, that we should talk about that as a group sometime.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stigma or a faux pas or something like that, but it needs clarity, right? So I think that would be cool to get some clarity on that.
Yeah, it's like what do you call this? Taboo topic. A little
Yes, totally. All right. Well, thanks for helping with the taboo topic there, brother.
No problem, man.
All right, you guys. Another good meeting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for facilitating. That was great. Great job.
I think I'm getting better at it. I don't know.
Oh, I think you're natural. All
It
right,
is
thanks,
fun.
guys.
It's hard to stop talking. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.